The Young and the Restless Spoilers. Mariah Copeland had always been a woman who walked a fine line between chaos and redemption. The scars of her past, the manipulation of Ian Ward, the trauma of being used as a pawn in other people's schemesthetes had all shaped her into someone who carried darkness in her bones. Yet she had fought so hard to overcome it, to build a life filled with love, stability, and family alongside Tessa Porter. For a time, it seemed as though she had succeeded. But one fateful night changed everything, unraveling years of progress and plunging her back into the abyss she thought she had escaped. What no one in Genoa City yet understood was that Mariah was carrying a secret so devastating it threatened not only her own freedom, but the very foundation of the family she had built. She had killed a man with her bare hands, and the guilt of it was slowly eating her alive. It began after a business trip that left her shaken to the core. She had been triggered by memories of Ian Ward, the man who had haunted her for so long. When she encountered an older gentleman who bore a faint resemblance to him, his gait, his voice, the way he carried himself, something inside her cracked. She began drinking heavily that night, perhaps trying to drown the memories, perhaps seeking to numb the fear that always lurked beneath the surface. At first, her interactions with the man seemed harmless enough, even flirtatious, as if she were trying to prove to herself that she was not afraid. But the evening spiraled into a nightmare when they ended up together in a cheap motel room. There, in a haze of alcohol and unresolved trauma, Mariah snapped. Whether she believed she was confronting Ian's ghost or whether the man made some move that set off her panic, the result was the same. She grabbed a pillow and pressed it down with all her strength, rage and terror surging through her until his body went still beneath her hands. When the haze cleared, she was left staring at the lifeless form of a stranger she had just killed, and the horror of what she had done seared itself into her soul. From that night on, Mariah was not the same. She returned to Genoa City with a hollow look in her eyes, haunted and broken in ways she could not articulate. Tessa saw at immediate tell-of distance the sudden mood swings, the way Mariah recoiled whenever intimacy or vulnerability was demanded of her. Tessa, desperate to save their marriage, pressed for answers. She begged Mariah to open up, to trust her, to share the burden of whatever was tormenting her. But Mariah, terrified of dragging Tessa into her darkness, insisted that it was not safe to tell her. Every time the words caught in her throat, she pushed them back down with the conviction that silence was the only way to protect the woman she loved. The lie was meant to be protective, but it became corrosive, eroding the very foundation of their relationship. As the weeks stretched on, Tessa's heart broke more each day. She could feel Mariah slipping away, walls building higher and higher between them, intimacy dissolving into secrets. She tried everything: romantic gestures, patient conversations, even ultimatums, but nothing cracked Mariah's armor. Tessa could not fight an invisible enemy, and eventually the weight of the unspoken truth drove them apart. Their marriage, once celebrated as one of the few genuine love stories in Genoa City, collapsed under the pressure of secrets. Tessa was left shattered, wondering what she had done wrong, while Mariah drowned in guilt, convinced that she had not only destroyed a man's life, but also destroyed the only person who had ever truly loved her. Yet the danger was far from over. Mariah's paranoia was not unfounded. Somewhere out there, someone knew what had happened. Perhaps the man had ties. Perhaps he was not the random stranger she told herself he was. Perhaps his death had set off a chain of suspicion that was slowly creeping toward Genoa City. Every time Mariah caught a glimpse of a shadow on the street, every time an unknown number called her phone, every time she thought she saw a familiar figure out of the corner of her eye, her heart pounded with the fear that her secret had been discovered. Was there a dangerous man who knew what she had done, who was waiting for the perfect moment to expose her? Was she being watched, hunted, blackmailed? The uncertainty was its own torture, and it explained why she pushed her family further away, because the closer they were to her, the more danger they might face if the truth came out. In soap opera fashion, the weight of this secret could not remain hers alone for long. Noah Newman's return threatened to break everything open. He sensed immediately that Mariah was hiding something catastrophic. His persistence became unbearable for her, cornering her until she finally cracked and confessed the truth. When she admitted to killing the man in that motel room, Noah was stunned, horrified, and yet compelled to protect her. He promised to keep her secret, understanding that if Sharon learned of it, her mother would crumble under the weight of another family tragedy. And if Tessa discovered the truth, her love for Mariah would turn to devastation. Noah swore to shield his sister, to keep her out of prison, to prevent their family from shattering. But in making that promise, he chained himself to her crime, complicit in her silence, forced to carry the same guilt that threatened to crush her. The heartbreak of Tessa Porter remained the most tragic thread in the story. She loved Mariah deeply, but every attempt to heal their marriage was met with walls of silence and half-truths. To know that Mariah had killed a man and had then chosen lies over honesty would destroy her completely. And yet, fate in Genoa City is never kind to secrets. The truth always finds its way out, often at the worst possible moment. When it does, the fallout for Mariah will be catastrophic. Tessa will have to grapple not only with the end of her marriage, but with the knowledge that the woman she loved was capable of taking a life and lying about it for months. The question will not be whether their marriage can survive, but whether Tessa can survive the shattering of her heart when the truth explodes into the open. For Mariah, the nightmare has only begun. Her choice to kill in a moment of panic, to bury the truth beneath silence, to sacrifice her marriage in the name of protecting Tessa, has set her on a path that will inevitably lead to exposure. Noah's loyalty can only shield her for so long, and her paranoia about someone dangerous, knowing the truth, may not be paranoia at all. The walls are closing in, and as fall unfolds in Genoa City, the revelation of Mariah's deadly secret may become the storyline that tears apart not only her life, but also the fragile family she has fought so hard to keep together. Mariah Copeland had always been fragile beneath her sharp tongue and quick temper, but now she was unraveling in plain sight. Those closest to her could sense it even if she refused to admit it. And Sharon Newman, the woman who had stood by her through every storm, was growing more alarmed with each passing day. Sharon noticed the way Mariah pulled away from her family, the way she avoided eye contact, the flashes of anger that erupted whenever anyone pushed too close to the truth. What unsettled Sharon most was the hostile Mariah, who had once leaned on her for guidance and comfort, now lashed out at her mother with threats and venom. Every question Sharon asked seemed to provoke fury rather than relief, and it became clear that the more Sharon tried to help, the more Mariah saw her as an enemy. The breaking point came one afternoon when Sharon, desperate to reach her daughter, gently asked about her therapy. She wondered aloud if Mariah was still seeing her counselor, still finding the professional support she needed to process her trauma. Mariah snapped instantly, her face hardening as she insisted she was still attending sessions, but her eyes betrayed her. There was something off in her expression, a twitch in her smile, a strain in her voice. Sharon recognized the signs. Mariah was lying. She had abandoned her therapy and was trying to shoulder the unbearable weight of her guilt and fear alone. Sharon, torn between worry and hurt, realized she was losing her daughter to secrets she could not penetrate. While Sharon struggled to reach Mariah, Tessa Porter was fighting her own battle, her heart torn apart by the collapse of her marriage. She had tried everything to save what they had, but Mariah's walls had proven unbreakable. Eventually, the silence drove her away, and in her loneliness she found comfort in Daniel Romalotti, Jr. What began as companionship slowly blossomed into something more, and the shift did not go unnoticed in Genoa City. For Tessa, moving forward was both an act of survival and betrayal, because no matter how much she tried to convince herself otherwise, part of her still loved Mariah. Yet love could not survive the constant secrets, the coldness, the lies. Daniel offered stability, honesty, and a safe harbor from the storm, and for Tessa, that became irresistible. Her new relationship, however, only deepened Mariah's isolation. Watching the woman she loved build a life with someone else was salt in wounds that had never healed, and though Mariah refused to admit it, jealousy tangled with guilt until she could barely breathe. Arya, caught in the middle, sensed the tension even if she could not understand it, and Mariah's distance only made the little girl cling tighter to Tessa, widening the chasm in their fractured family. But Mariah's deepest fears had nothing to do with jealousy. Beneath her anger, beneath the lies about therapy, beneath her desperate attempts to keep Sharon and Tessa at arm's length, lay a terror that consumed her. Someone knew what she had done. She had killed a man, and while she had convinced herself it had been an accident fueled by alcohol and trauma, the knowledge of that night never left her. Every knock at the door, every strange look from a passerby, every whisper in the coffee house made her heart race with the suspicion that someone was watching her. Worse still, she began to believe that her loved ones were in danger because of her crime. Tessa, Arya, Sharon, even Faith Anion connected to her could become collateral damage if the wrong person decided to expose the truth. The paranoia drove her deeper into anger, deeper into secrecy, and further away from those who might have helped her. Then came the whispers that rattled her to her core. For years, everyone had believed Ian Ward was dead, the monster of her past finally buried and gone. His crimes had left scars that never healed, and his shadow lingered in her nightmares. But a handful of fans, sharp-eyed and obsessive, had remembered the subtle scene from years ago. Ian's body on a gurney, his chest still, his eyes closed until they weren't. A faint movement, a flutter of his eyelids, a hint of breath that had been dismissed or forgotten in the chaos of the storyline. If Ian had survived, if he had been lurking in the shadows all this time, then Mariah's nightmare was not just guilt, it was prophecy. He could be alive, he could know what she had done, and he could be the one threatening her loved ones. The thought paralyzed her. If Ian returned, he would not come quietly. He would come to torment her, to dismantle everything she had built, to expose her crime and twist it into a weapon that would destroy her family. Sharon sensed her daughter's growing paranoia, but could not piece together the truth. She knew Mariah was lying about therapy, knew she was unraveling, but the threats and hostility made it impossible to get close. Sharon had survived enough trauma in her own life to recognize the signs of someone spiraling toward collapse, and yet she felt helpless watching it happen to her daughter. Faith, too, began to notice the tension, confused by the anger and distance that filled their once loving home. The Newman family had weathered countless scandals, but this felt different. This was darker, more personal, more destructive. If Sharon knew the full truth that Mariah had killed a man and was hiding it, that Ian Ward might still be alive and circling her daughter like a prix de torche, would have been shattered. But the cruelest twist of all was that Sharon was already unraveling without the truth, because her daughter's anger, lies, and threats were enough to wound her deeply. Tessa, meanwhile, moved further into Daniel's orbit, her heart torn between love and survival. She missed Mariah, but every attempt to reach her had been met with stone walls. She did not know the truth of that night, the horror that Mariah carried, but she felt its echoes in every interaction. And though she tried to move on, to build something stable for herself and Arya, she could not silence the guilt that gnawed at her. What if she had abandoned Mariah when she needed her most? What if her own heartbreak had blinded her to the severity of Mariah's trauma? Tessa did not yet realize that she was not merely dealing with marital collapse, was living in the wake of a deadly secret that could still explode and pull her back into Mariah's orbit, whether she wanted it or not. And so the stage was set for a storyline that threatened to consume everyone. Mariah's guilt, Sharon's helplessness, Tessa's heartbreak, Arya's innocence, and the looming specter of Ian Ward formed a storm that no one could escape. If Ian truly had survived, his return would not just be a personal torment for Maria Heat, would be a reckoning for Genoa City. He would know her secret, he would use it, and he would take pleasure in watching her family crumble. The only question left was whether Mariah's silence and Noah's loyalty would hold long enough to protect her, or whether the truth would erupt at the worst possible moment, leaving destruction in its wake.